If you're looking at buying a condo in northeastern Florida, and for that matter, anywhere in Florida, you're going to want to watch this video because there are some serious things, some serious changes that are happening to condos, specifically here in Florida, that are going to change the pricing of condos and how much it costs for an HOA within a condo on a monthly basis. These changes are all pretty recent, so if you haven't heard about this, you definitely want to tune in till the end. What's up, everyone? My name's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, Florida, and if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you already want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest in real estate here in northeastern Florida. So in today's video, I want to cover three main topics, and they're all very important. The first one is going to be the legislation that led us to where we are today that is causing some of the biggest problems and maybe some of the biggest upsides in condos that we're going to see in the future. We're also going to take a look at the general condo market, compare it to previous years, just so you know what you're getting into. And at the end of this video, we're going to take a look at a different group of buyers and show you who is most affected by all of these changes that we're seeing in the condo market today. So unless you were living under a rock these past couple of years, you definitely heard about the Surfside condo collapse in South Florida that happened in 2021. There was a building, it was more than 3 stories high, and it just pretty much fell out of nowhere. But in all honesty, if you look at the pictures of the building, I mean, it looked like it was almost an abandoned building. It's kind of crazy that people were even living in there, and thoughts and prayers to those families that lost their lives. But the building was in very rough shape and ended up just free falling and collapsing on itself. And that's because that it wasn't upkept. So because of that, we've seen some major changes in legislation here in Florida that are going to affect condos moving forward. And at the end of this year is when a lot of these reports are due. So we haven't seen the worst of these changes in the condos just yet. Some of them have prior to the end of this year. But like most people, if you're going to school, you know, a lot of people wait to the end, the last minute. They're going to stay up all night and they're going to push through to get ready for that test the next morning. That's probably no different to a lot of the condo associations in our area. They're going to wait till the last minute, which is the end of this year, to get all their paperwork through. So let's take a look at some of that legislation that has come out since that Surfside condo collapse in 2021. Effective in July 2022, condos and co-ops that are 3 stories or more in height must have a milestone inspection once the building reaches 30 years in age and every 10 years thereafter. If the building is within 3 miles of coastline, the milestone inspection must be conducted when the building reaches 20 years of age and then reoccurring every 7 years thereafter. Initial studies for existing buildings due by December 31st, 2024, so that end of the year test that everyone's preparing for. These studies require a detailed inspection and cost estimation for the maintenance and replacement of common elements over a 30-year period. And to many who don't own a condo, you would honestly think like, man, how is this not in place? How is there not like an engineer going out to check these buildings every so often? And that's definitely a question I ask myself. Even though I'm in the business, you would think that this was already existing. It's 2024. Obviously this happened in 21, but this should have already happened, right? So the fact that this is just now coming into play, of course, it's more legislation, it's more rules, which typically I am not for. But when it comes down to safety and when it comes down to condos just collapsing out of nowhere, we don't want to see that, right? That's not good for my business. That's not good for people's health. So I definitely think that this legislation is a move in a positive direction. But as we move forward through these next couple of years, and especially through this last 6 months of 2024, I think the condo market is going to see a little bit of pain. Now, will it eventually normalize and even out? 100%. Everything does. But up until that point, I imagine we're going to see a lot of changes. We're going to see potentially more condos come on the market because sellers or owners of those condos are going to be pinched and strapped for cash. A lot of these people that own condos are on fixed incomes. You're going to start flooding the market with condos. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know that 100% sure, but we're going to take a look at the data so that you guys can make your own assumptions of what's going to happen here in the next couple months and in the future if you are expecting to buy a condo. Now, the one thing to mention about this legislation is that to have an engineer come out and do anything, if they come over to do anything at your home, just to get them in the door is going to cost you about $1,000, right? So you think realtors are expensive. Try hiring an engineer to come over and see if you can, remove this wall and put a structural beam. That's going to cost you $1,000 at least. So imagine what it is on a 10-story, condo building versus a single family home. It's going to be much, much more expensive. And this is a cost item that's going to go on the balance sheet of the HOA. So because of that, we are already seeing, and we expect to see it more, the HOA of these condominiums start to rise. Like I said earlier, there's also going to be certain standards that the condos are now held to. If they're not within those certain standards, well, they're going to have to make some drastic changes, right? And I mean, a lot of these changes are probably going to come around structural integrity of the building, right? So if they don't have the structural integrity that the standard that they're looking for, some of these condos could be seeing some huge assessments, which if you're buying into an area and you're not familiar with what's going on, that could be a huge hit to your pocketbook. Now, guys, I don't want you to think that I'm some kind of doomer, right? I definitely think there's opportunity within the condo market, especially right now because of all this legislation happening. There's a little bit of blood in the water. There's fear, right, around what's going on in the condos. And I'm just trying to be informative, right? So if you look at the stats, and I'll pull this pie chart up here, there's a ton of condos that are going to be affected by this because most of the condo inventory in Florida as a whole is going to be pretty old, right? So 68.9% of Florida condos are impacted currently by this legislation. So that means that there's almost 70% of the market is going to see a change in their HOA fees, or maybe some assessments coming down the line, maybe changes in their insurance for the master policy of the condominium. There's a lot of things that are almost like a domino effect that could happen because of this legislation that may or may not have happened depending on your condo building and if they put forward the report before the end of the year. Maybe some are on it, but my experience with most HOAs is that most of them aren't on top of it. They're going to take their time and they're going to get to it at the last minute. And that's across condos, that's single family homes. HOAs are typically not run by people who know what to do in these situations. I honestly think that should be a whole separate job, but that's a whole different video for another day. So almost 70% of all the units in Florida are going to be affected. That's over 1 million condos that are going to be affected by this legislation, leaving roughly about 500 to 600,000 condos that have not fallen into that 20 or 30 year mark yet. So with all this legislation passing, you're probably thinking the condo market is probably dumping. People are probably selling them. They're in price cuts. It's going to be a fire sale for these condos. And you're partially right. If we take a look at condo average monthly sales here in Jacksonville, we're going to compare them year over year since 2003. Now, if you look at 2010, that's probably where we're about on par in terms of sales of condos, right? So we had 168 sales this past year, similar to 2010 where we had 175. Now, the shocking thing to look at is when you take a look at the year prior in 2023, obviously Surfside collapse had already happened here. That people probably knew that there was something afoot, but we still had a considerable bit more sales in 2023. We had 204 condo sales on average, down 17.7% to 168 condo sales per month on average. So that's a pretty significant drop. We'll see how it goes towards the end of the year and how much this is affected by this legislation. But we're back to 2010 levels, which if you know what happened during that time, of course, we were coming out of the great financial crisis. And housing wasn't doing too hot. Now, most things weren't. And we really didn't see things start to pick up until 2012, which, here at 2010, we're at 175 monthly sales. And we're at 168, so we are below that. So people are definitely a little fearful when it comes down to the condos this year. So when you take a look at the condo months of supply, now months of supply is essentially if you put a home on the market today, and if you were to stop putting homes on the market after that, how many months would it take for run out of that current inventory that's active on the market? And for condos, it's right at 6.2 months of inventory. So it would take us 6 months to sell all those condos without putting any more back on the market. And this is a good way to gauge demand. Now, that's considerably higher than what we saw in 2021. And you've probably seen on all these other doomer YouTube channels that are saying Florida housing market's crashing, inventory is spiking, and they're right. But they don't look at the historical picture, right? They don't account for the population increase in Florida. They also don't account for what it looked like in the years prior. So if you take a look at the graph here, you can see that on average, the months of supply for condos is 8 months, right? Now, that's also taking into account for 2008. So it is it is a little skewed because they definitely spiked to, like you can see here, 40 months in 2000, looks like 2009, 2010 type of time. So condos were not doing hot at that point. But if you take a look and you really zoom out to take a look at the months of inventory, we're still under where that 8 months of supply is. We're at 6.2 months. And yes, we've definitely had a spike since 2021, but we're pretty much back to the average of what it would be prior to those years, right? So still not anything to worry about. But I want you guys to take a look at this and make sure that you're registering that this isn't a crisis just yet, right? We are going to keep our eye on this to make sure and see if any changes happen. But as of right now, all the doom and gloom that you've seen, though it's great to click and watch and you get a little fear, a little adrenaline pumping, we're not there yet. Okay, and I just try to, obviously I'm a realtor, you can say, oh, you're biased, you don't know what you're talking about. So if we take a look at the total percentage of all listings and what the condo market actually takes up out of the northeastern Florida area, well, we have a ton of single family homes here. So you can see that we have almost 75% of single family homes, and that the condo market is around 13% of our market. So really not a huge portion of it. You're going to see a lot of the condos in more or less Jacksonville. You're going to see a lot of them in St. Augustine Beach, Ponte Vedra, Jax Beach. That's where the majority of these condos are going to be. So if you take a look from January 2024 to July of 2024, you can kind of see that the market in condos and single family homes have kind of stayed the same, right? So there hasn't been too much change in the percentage of all active listings. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, everything's blowing up. But in relation to the entire market, yes, things have gone up because we were at historically low lows. There was a time there's 12 days on market for our entire area. That is not sustainable. It's not a real estate market that is fun to be in. As a seller, yeah, you might make some more money over the asking price that you're looking for, but as you go to be a buyer in that market, it sucks, right? So we're definitely in a better position in a more balanced market today, in my opinion. Now, active listings and sold listings are totally different things, right? So we have the same amount of inventory coming on the market, but condos are not selling as well as we looked at before. We're down year over year, 17.7% on our monthly average of condo sales. They're not selling as well as they were in the years past. And that's partly because of the cost of condos, the cost of insurance, but also this legislation has a big chunk of what it has to do with. So when we take a look at months of supply versus everything else in northeastern Florida, we can see condos at 6.2 months of supply, and then we can see all other properties down at 3.9 months of supply. So literally almost double what we're seeing in single family homes, townhomes, manufactured homes, right? We're seeing a much larger discrepancy between condos and the rest of the properties on the market. So we mentioned that condo sales are down year over year. We're on the same level of like 2010 type of condo sales. And you can see that on average, we're about 10% of the closings in the market when you look back to 2016. But this year, we're only at 8%. Now, we're not through the entire year yet, so maybe that picks up towards the end of the year. We do have a lot of snowbirds that come in towards the end of the year, don't want to deal with the cold, want to pick up something. So maybe that's where that 2% extra might come in. But as of right now, we're not trending on that 10% line. So closed sales for condos are down versus the historical pattern. So the next data point is pretty interesting because when you look at the condo complex average days on market, you can actually see when you track back to 2019, which is pre-pandemic, that the days on market for condos is still lower than it was in 2019, which to me is very interesting. But maybe they're not factoring in all of the homes that are sitting on the market because of all the active inventory. But we're also talking about complexes here. So we separated everything by certain complexes. So if they're not selling, they're more than likely not on this list. But if you take a look in 2019, Summer Key was the best-selling condo complex with 45 sales with an average days on market of 32. But the average days on market for all the condo complexes during 2019 was 80.1, right? Now, if you fast forward to 2024, you can see the Reserve at St. James is the best-selling condo complex with 15 sales. Now, we're only halfway through the year, so that's probably tracking for 30 sales, let's say. And days on market, 54 days on market. So we're down in sales, but we're down in days on market, which is a really interesting statistic. What do you guys think about that? What does that tell you about the condo market here in northeastern Florida? We have inventory rising, we have sales going down, but the days on market is still lower than it was in 2019, and the closings are lower, but the prices are staying the same. And we'll get into that soon. So let's take a look at showings overall, right? So it's 7% interest rate. Showings have got to be down pretty significantly here in our area. And they're down, but in my opinion, not what you would think, right? If I'm thinking the housing market's going to crash, if I'm thinking interest rates are causing such a big problem for buyers here, then to me, I would see like a 10% decline in showings being something that would at least spark my interest. But when you look at the data here, 2022, we had 95,000 showings, going up to 100,000 in 2023. That's a 5% increase. And then in 2024, we actually went down 4.1%. So really, total showings across those 2 years are kind of flat, if you're just averaging them all out. Take that same data and just pull condos out, and you'll see a drastic change. We see from 2022 to 2023, a little bit less than 1% in total showings going down. And then from 2023 to 2024, a 17.7% drop in showings, which to me, that's something that's like, hey, what's going on here? There's something in the water. There's something that needs to be looked at here. And I think a lot of this has to do with the changes that all these condominiums are going through. Insurance has spiked. So the master policy for these condominiums have gone up. We've all heard about the insurance problems here in Florida. Then you also have this legislation. That's going to cause the HOA, the fee that you pay every month, to go up because they got to pay for this. And now they have to have a certain amount of money in reserves. And now they have to have assessments put on homeowners so that they can pay for this engineering study. And then maybe there needs to be work. There's a whole bunch of things that factor in to this study that relate to more costs to you as a homeowner or a condo owner. So we're still going to take a look at some stats, but I also wanted to cover what buyer pool is being hurt the most. So we kind of separated everything into 3 separate buyer pools, which would be entry, move up, and luxury. And a lot of this is based off of pricing. So essentially up to 400 is going to be the entry level pricing. 400 to like $1 million is going to be the move up condo buyer, and then above $1 million is going to be the luxury buyer. And before you watch this next part, I'd love to know, who do you think was affected the most? Would it be the entry level, the move up, or the luxury buyer? Let me know in the comments below who you think was most affected by all these changes. So if you look at Jacksonville Showings for the entry level buyer pool for condos, you're going to see that's where the majority of the pain is. And that's because under that 400,000 mark, you have first-time home buyers. You have people who are just getting their foot in the door, literally, for buying a home, buying a condo. And when the interest rates spiked from 3.5% to 7% within a couple of months, that was a gut check to a lot of those buyers because they went from affording it to not being able to afford it very, very quickly. It felt like it changed overnight, honestly. So if you take a look at this graph here, you can see from 2022 to 2023, it was down 7.1%. And then from 2023 to 2024, down 23.5%. So since 2022, the entry-level buyer for condos has gone down 30%. Now, another interesting piece of information is taking a look at that next data set, right? The move up buyer, right? Now, this is across all property types. We're going to see the move up buyer from 2022 to 2023 go up almost 13%, right? So more showings are happening in that buyer pool. Really, the market has been pretty much flat since that time in terms of interest rate or any major changes to the market. We've only seen it go up 1%. So it did a lot of its work in 2022 to 2023, pretty much over 14% in showings across all property types year over year since 2022. And if you take the luxury data set of this graph, you can see that from 2022 to 2023, it went up 23%. So a huge jump there. And from what I can tell in the luxury market, one, prices have gone up. So we just have more $1 million properties than we did before. But our buyer pool has definitely changed. We have people moving from South Florida, we have people moving from California, people moving from New York, a lot of areas with a lot more money than Northeastern Florida typically has had. So we're just seeing a different buyer in today's market. Anecdotal story, I've seen so many cyber trucks out on the road. I mean, it's like, I typically, if you watch these videos, I say like, you can't drive 5 minutes within St. Augustine without seeing a St. Johns County sheriff. That's a fact. But now it's probably, you can't drive 10 minutes without seeing a Cybertruck here in St. Johns County. And initially, to me, that was very surprising because I've got my goggles on when I was a kid. You know, there wasn't a whole bunch of wealth here. But I also have to think that it's changed so drastically. There is wealth here now, right? So I just got home at a lunch meeting. I saw a Tesla Cybertruck, and I also saw a McLaren within my 10-minute drive from lunch. So a lot of money's moving to the area. But if you take a look at 2023 to 2024 for the luxury buyer, you're going to see that it's gone down 11%. So really, people would say, oh, the luxury market's tanking. If you look at it from 2022 to 2024, it's flat, right? There's not really much of a change. It's still a pretty good increase, especially when you're talking about $1 million plus. The entry-level buyer is most affected because of interest rates. They typically don't have the money in terms of putting down or buying down your interest rate or putting more money down so that their mortgage is lower. So they're really affected by any change in interest rate. Makes a big deal to them. The move-up buyer probably has some equity in their previous home that they're able to move around so that they're not as affected by interest rates. And the luxury buyer, more than likely, I think it's like 33% or maybe even more than that, I'd have to look back at the stats, are paying with cash. So they're not affected at all with interest rates because they're just going to buy it straight out. And more than likely, the majority of people are coming from South Florida, Miami being the #1 relocation place in northeastern Florida, New York, California, where properties are just worth a ton more. So they come here and they see something for $1 million and they're like, this is $3 million where I live. So it's a steal for them, at least in their mind. So to round it out, let's just take a look at the median sold price for condos over the past couple of years. And it's no secret that prices have gone up drastically, but the HOAs have also gone up drastically as well. So when you take a look here, your median sale price from 2019 went up 70.9% for the median sale price of $260K for a condo, which in all reality is pretty affordable still. That just tells you where our market was prior to 2020. You take a look at the median monthly fees for these condos, $450 a month. So it's gone up 47.1%, up from $306 per month. So a pretty good increase over those past couple of years, really seeing the majority of that increase happen within the past 3 years. But that affects everyone's affordability, right? So if you're living there, you're on a fixed income, and your HOA fees go up $150 a month, that's a huge impact over the entire year. On the flip side of that, the good thing is if you are kind of in a pickle where you're like, hey, I can't really afford this place anymore, it's becoming more expensive than I want it to be, well, you're probably going to walk away with a good bit of equity because you're up 70% on average across all condos in our area since 2019. So yes, it would suck to have to move and uproot yourself, but at the same time, at least you're not moving. At least you're moving with equity. You're not leaving with nothing. And this is more of a bonus for everyone out there. I do have an Excel file. If you want to reach out to me, it's going to show you the top performing and the worst performing condos in our entire market. We aggregated all that data for you. So if you are looking to buy in the hottest or the worst, just because you're like, hey, I see opportunity here, I do have an Excel file that outlines all the sales that happened here. But I want to cover a quick graph on here that shows sales in relativity to the HOA price, right? So as you can see on the screen, we have top performing condos, mid performing condos, and bottom performing condos. The top performing condos have 8 or more sales and their HOA price is around $500, right? The bottom performing condos where they don't see as many sales, their HOA is typically much, much more expensive. There's one on here for $4,000 a month. I'm not sure what you're getting for $4,000 a month that makes it worth it, but that's on here. So typically, you're not going to see a lot of sales with those $4,000 a month because that is a much, much smaller buyer pool. So take that with a grain of salt. But you can see from the condo HOA fees, the average total monthly fee for the top tier is going to be $412. So pretty reasonable, right? That's, typically you're getting amenities, typically you're on the beach, and you're getting, they're taking care of the exterior of the property, you're taking care of the interior. $412 is not too bad, right? If you look at the mid tier, they're at $551 and the bottom tier $724. So it's almost a direct correlation to the costs of, how many sales are happening to the costs of your HOA. And guys, that is it. If you are looking for that Excel file, make sure you reach out to me and my team directly. We'll shoot it right over to you so that you can have that information on hand so you can take a look if you are looking to buy a condo in the area. we're also here to help, right? This is my whole job here. We're able to put this information together. We're able to give it to you guys and hopefully give you some more information so that you can make an educated decision on what you already want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest in real estate here in Northeastern Florida. But it's been a pleasure. I hope you guys have a great day. If you need anything, you can always reach out to me and my team. See ya.